well, my opponent, he said this and he said that, and I just don't like how he smells. You're like, hey man, let me tell you about Jesus. You're like, why win? Chacos. If one more person throws a Coke can in the ocean, all the sea turtles will die. And the really important thing for us to remember is it's not us who's changing people's lives. We're the vessel. We're the tool that God uses to bring the gospel to people who need him the most. All right, so before we start with today's video, I started a lesson series on apologetics, and it was a really quick, and I say really quick breakdown, discussions and debates, all this stuff, and it's leaning towards a gospel conversation. But I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit about what I taught tonight, a quick breakdown, a quick synopsis of everything that I studied. I only had 2 hours to write this, so enjoy. I hope you learned something. Defending your faith, part 1. Have fun. Talk about a faith worth defending. So one of the most important things that we need to recognize when we have a faith worth defending, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of that? When you hear somebody say, I got to defend my faith, what are you thinking they're doing? Fighting, yeah. Because nobody ever hears the positive term, oh, they're going to do something positive with it. They're going out in an all-out screaming, spit flying, tears flowing, just like all kinds of snot coming out their nose, fighting, right? Does everybody know what I'm talking about? We're all on YouTube. We've seen so many people go and do weird things. How many of you have seen the street preachers on the street corners holding the signs, and you have some weird blue-haired people come and tear it down, and then you have some people come in and it starts another fist fight over here. This guy's fighting, they're fighting, there's a baby chewing on somebody's ankle. Like, you know, we don't know how to fight well. We really don't. And there's a lot of reasons why we don't know how to fight well, but one of the biggest ones, because we're human, is our emotions. Emotions get in the way. And so what I want to do is I want to spend tonight just kind of doing an introduction of what talking about defending our faith looks like, how to do it well, what to look for, what to not do, what to avoid, and if somebody's doing some things that we're not supposed to enjoy, you avoid those as well. So the first thing we're going to look at is what makes a good debater. What makes a good debater? It should be at the top of your list. The first thing that we're going to look at in somebody who is a good debater is that they are inquisitive and they do research. They're inquisitive and they do research. Everything that they do, they have a deep interest in a certain subject or a specific subject. And in our case, in our conversation tonight, who is our deep interest in subject? Jesus, right? Jesus, our salvation. Telling people about Jesus, telling people about the good news of the gospel. We've talked about it on Sunday mornings. What does gospel mean? Good news. Good news, that's right. Good. So we, as a group of people, if we want to debate well, if we want to talk about and defend our faith well, we need to have an inquisitive and researched nature about it. So we have to have a deep interest in subjects and the ability to conduct thorough research to support arguments with facts and evidence. There's a really popular phrase that goes around the internet that's like, facts don't care about your feelings. Have you heard about that? Yes? Okay, we're going to talk about that. So the next thing is that we have to have critical thinking and analysis. Critical thinking and analysis is so important because that means it is the capacity to analyze topics. Not just look at a topic and go, I think I can wing it. This is not an impromptu conversation. We're not making it up as we go to justify why we believe what we believe. I'm so sorry. I wish I had 2 TVs. I know I'm blocking it. But what we're doing is we're trying to understand different viewpoints, identify logical gaps in arguments, and you have to be quick on your feet. Next thing is that we need to be clear and persuasive in our communication. We need to have that. It's super important. We need to be able to express ideas clearly and concisely using appropriate vocal emphasis. Because I can guarantee most of you, when you talk to your parents at home, probably put a little inflection on a word when you responded to them that was at the wrong spot in the sentence. Do you know what I mean? So like your parents go, did you clean your room? And the first thing you say is, yeah. How's that going to go? Not very well. So we have to make sure that we're using very, very appropriate vocal emphasis, that we're not trying to trigger people by the way we're speaking. Here's a better way. How many of you would say that you're sarcastic when you talk? Okay. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it's not. And you know exactly when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. Yeah, we need to be active listeners. Active listening. It is the skill to listen attentively, understand what your opponent is feeling, what your opponent is processing, what your opponent is trying to wrestle with of their own. Because do we honestly all have the perfect answers? No, we don't. We're all struggling through things together. And the best part in any conversation is to listen to somebody instead of just being like, well, I think you're dumb, and here's why. That's not a good way to start a conversation, because there's no point in there that allows somebody to feel heard, acknowledged, or any sort of opening for a dialogue. You've shut it down immediately as soon as you've said something like that. So we need to be active listeners. The next thing is we need to have composure and confidence. Composure and confidence. That means that we need to stay calm under pressure. And when you are debating somebody about something as serious as the gospel, as something as serious as sharing with them their salvation that Jesus is freely offering them, and they are arguing against the case for Christ, and they're arguing why Jesus was a really great guy, but he wasn't God, you've got to make sure your emotions are maintained at all times. Because the first thing you're going to do is when you fall apart and you're not composed and you're not confident about it, they're like, your God's not real because you don't actually believe this stuff. Like, it's so easy to poke holes in everything that we say if we do not conduct ourselves in a manner that is appropriate and well thought through and well maintained. That's just, it's trash, but it's true. It's so hard for us to remember all these rules, and there's more, and we're going to get to them. But as you're working through this, think about it. Do I do this well? Is this something I need to work on? Is this something that I can apply practically in a conversation? Forget debating at this point. Think about how you have your conversations in general. When your parents are talking to you, do you say, I'm a great active listener? Or do you go, I heard half of what my parents said. My parents said, clean my room, wash the car, feed the fish. All I heard was, clean the fish, wash my room. You know what I'm saying? We need to be active listeners. So, the next thing is the composure. Oh, we already got composure and confidence? Good. All right, the next thing, respect and open-mindedness. Okay? This is important. You've got to respect the person you're talking to across the room. This is not WWE where give me a wrestler. So you got Roman Reigns and The Undertaker entering the ring. They're not looking to understand each other's points of views. They're just looking at the other and being like, I'm going to turn you into a piece of meat, and I'm going to smash you and throw you out and all that stuff. There's no sort of respect and open-mindedness. There's no willingness to adapt to someone's perspectives or understand their feelings or transferring or even like having the ability to change one's mind if you do not have this in your steps. It's not going to happen. Because you yourself know that if someone's not respecting you, you're not going to listen. There's no way you're going to listen. Because all that has happened is the conversation's been shut down, and there's no room for moving forward, which is not good. The next one, this is a fancy word. It's called analytical acumen. Yeah, I didn't know what this word was either when I started doing the research, but it is the ability to stay on topic. How many of you know somebody who, when they argue, they like to jump from one topic to another, to another, to another, and by the time you get to the 7th topic, you're like, what are we fighting about? I'm going to pause here and say this is major relationship advice, okay? If you're thinking about dating somebody or you are dating somebody and they can't stay on a topic when you're having a serious conversation, you're going to get so lost, and it is so frustrating emotionally. It's hard. You need to stay on the topic and focus on what you're supposed to be talking about because it will ruin the relationship, the conversation, and any sort of objective that you had when trying to talk about it. So it's kind of like you say, let's talk about Jesus. And then you wind up talking about the Avengers movie. How did you get there from Jesus? You see what I'm saying? We need to make sure that not only we stay on topic, but we keep the conversation on the same realm. Because what that does is it gives somebody a foothold to drag you into a pit that they've designed over here. Does that make sense? So like if you are having a conversation about Jesus and you're arguing with somebody who's an atheist, you start here with Jesus and they can drag you into something that is their territory, their domain, they're super knowledgeable about, and you just let yourself wander into a trap. Make sense? So we need to make sure that we stay on topics. The next one is adaptability. You need to learn from mistakes. You can learn from the mistakes in the moment, but you need to learn from the mistakes that are happening right there. And you can walk away from them and go, yeah, this is where I messed up. This is how I can do better next time. It happens all the time. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, so we can learn from them. We need to adapt to them and make sure that we're successful when we talk about these things. The next one, I talked about this at the very beginning, emotional intelligence. You have to keep your emotions in check. You do. You cannot let yourself get emotional and start crying. When I was in high school, we had a class where debate was part of it. Not like speech class. It was a debate class where you had to defend your faith. And I can't tell you how awkward it was to watch people cry in class because they were frustrated and they were annoyed, and you were going up against somebody who was trying to destroy your faith, and they're like, yeah, but Jesus loves me. How do you know? Because I know. Okay, we'll prove it. You know, that's how it went. So if you cannot keep your emotions in check, you're not going to have mental clarity. You're not going to be able to stay on topic because you're so frustrated. And if you have siblings, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They frustrate you so much that there's nothing that you can do except punch a hole in the wall, because that's the only thing you can punch around you, right? Don't punch holes in the walls, guys. It's expensive to replace. So make sure you have emotional intelligence. And the last thing for a good debater is you need to have objective persuasion. This is the focus on the exchange of ideas and the goal of persuasion rather than personal victory or emotional outbursts. What that means is you need to be so well in tune with the conversation that by the end of it, you've gained influence instead of a win. It's not about winning when it comes to a topic like debating over Christ. It's not about destroying somebody's ideas or thoughts or anything that they think. Because that's not how we win somebody to Christ, is it? Because if we were to go into a situation and just be like, trounce somebody with their VeggieTales theology, and you're over here going, I'm Spurgeon, and I'm here to destroy you, they're not going to walk away wanting to know anything about your God. They're not going to walk away wanting to know anything about how much Jesus loves them, because all they can remember is how much of a jerk you were and how much it made them feel like they did not want to have any part of it. So we got to be super careful. Now, I'm going to teach you some things that were actually pretty interesting about somebody who has bad qualities. Now, you probably know these people, and you probably have some of these yourself. I'm guilty of this too, and I'll probably point them out. But here are the bad debaters. Now, there's a whole subcategory, and they teach you this in speech class. So if you're a senior, if you're taking speech, or you're starting speech, this is like right up your alley. And I'll go quick, because some of these you've seen, and some of you can go online and watch debates about this. The first one is that you have an over-reliance on fallacies. And this is really important. A fallacy is something that's not true, but you're focused on that, and you're relying on that, and you're just like, this is everything that I have. It's like my little precious. So instead of solid evidence, a bad debater will frequently use logical fallacies, which are flawed reasoning techniques. And these are the examples. The first one is ad hominem attacks. Notice, we're bad debaters if we are attacking, and this is one of them. We are attacking the character of the opponent rather than addressing the argument. Can you give me one example of attacking your opponent without discussing any of the issues? There's nothing worse than watching a political debate on TV and you see one of the presidential candidates going, well, my opponent, he said this and he said that, and I just don't like how he smells. Right? It doesn't make any sense. You're just like, how does he smell? We can't smell him through the TV. What does that mean? Or then you have his opponent go on something like, well, he's got a fake tan. Did you see that fake tan? It's a fake tan. And you're like, it's fake? You know, because that's all we think about. We're just attacking people for the things that other people have, like physical features. You smell bad. You're ugly. Like it doesn't add to an argument. You're like, hey, man, let me tell you about Jesus. And you're like, why win? Chacos. Like that's the only thing you're focusing on. Or your Crocs, man, you need to get some new Crocs. Those are old, right? Like we're just roasting people, but we're not focusing on the argument. So that's ad hominem. The next one is the straw man argument. And this is distorting or exaggerating the opponent's position to make it easier to attack, right? Again, politics are really good about these things. They like to over-exaggerate and blow things up and make it sound like it's way worse than it is, and I'm not going to pick any because I don't want to emotionally charge this room, okay? But it is exaggerating, distorting the opponent's positions to make it easier to attack. So basically, we're lying, right? We're lying about somebody in order to fix it or influence people to think the way we're thinking. The next one is the slippery slope. This is the arguing that a minor action will inevitably lead to a disastrous extreme outcome. okay? The first one that I can think of off the top of my head is pollution. You got people going, if one more person throws a Coke can in the ocean, all the sea turtles will die, right? That's the over-exaggeration. That is, if I emotionally get you to think on my level about something this bad, then one Coke can is going to turn into an entire polluted ocean, and then no more sea turtles. Or the one we all seen where it's those dogs in the shelters, you know what I'm talking about? And Sarah McLachlan's singing the song about it flying away or something like that, and they're all like, if you don't give us 40 cents, this dog, Toto, will not make it. And you're just like, oh, I feel so bad. So then we're all going to want to start throwing change at the dog pounds so that we can fix it. They just want money. So it's a slippery slope. Then the next one is a false dichotomy. It is presenting a complex issue with multiple options as a simplistic either-or choice. It's like, here's the problem, and here's a lot of really simple solutions, right? So one of them is like, I can't pay for gas, but if all of you give me 25 cents, you'll be happier too. Does that make sense? So we can't make it something where like you present a problem and then everybody else has to buy into your problem. It's your problem. Make sense? Tracking? Good. All right. Last one on this one is a hasty generalization. This is drawing broad conclusions based on a very small sample, right? That's like you going to school. How many of you are public school? 415. Okay, you've got 415 people, okay? And you are going to a school where the lunch on Tuesdays is fish sticks and you don't like them. So you ask 5 of your friends, hey, do you like the fish sticks? And your 5 friends go, no, it's trash. And then you go to the principal and you're like, hey, my class thinks that the fish sticks are trash and they need to go away. You just generalized your whole entire 415 people because of 6 people's opinions. Do you see how easy it is to emotionally charge somebody with that information? It's not a poll. That's just you sitting in your group going, man, I don't like fish sticks. That's it. Emotionally, you have just let yourself run amok with something like that. And that's not healthy. That's not what we should do. Now, if we move into the broader scope, we have a bunch of different options of what makes a bad debater. Intellectual dishonesty. Intellectual dishonesty. This can take many forms, from quote mining, selectively using parts of a source to distort its meaning, or to outright lying or exaggerating the facts. Like, you saw one accident on a street corner, so immediately you go, this street corner is a death machine. It's conquering so many lives because one person had an accident. They got a boo-boo, they got 911 called, and now all of a sudden it's a death trap, right? But you've over-exaggerated the statistical analysis of one car accident and made it, we need cameras and we need lights, we need police patrols, we need all this stuff, because you exaggerated. Intellectual dishonesty will get people somewhere, but it's not a good way to go. The next one is a shallow or limited research. And that's all basically one person going, yeah, there was a big comet and it came into the Earth's atmosphere and it hit the Earth and it created the Gulf of America, right? That's my Pauly Shore for you in the back. That was actually really good. I've been trying to get him. That was good. If you don't know who Pauly Shore is, I'm sorry. But it's shallow or limited research. You read something or you saw a TikTok or you saw a reel that told you this information and you're walking away going, this is gospel, man. This is facts. This is intellectual property now. Don't do that. All right, the next one is confusing opinions with facts. I said earlier, facts don't care about your feelings. You are allowed to have opinions. You are allowed to think the things you think because that's what makes you you. But you need to make sure that if you're going to start a debate or have a conversation or do something, that your intellectual conversation is factual. We can talk all day about who the best superhero is, but that doesn't change that Thor is the best superhero, okay? Just saying. So confusing opinions with facts. You need to make sure that you are making your basis for an intellectual grounding. The next one is a lack of structure. This is disorganized arguments. This is you going in with like 10 different arguments for one thing and you not having a main point. Don't let somebody like this come in and go, I've got 5 different things to talk about, buckle up. And then you wind up with cottage cheese as the point of your conversation. Don't do that. That's bad. That's bad conversation in general. That's like you sitting there in silence with your best friend and they go, I wonder what a cantaloupe tastes like. And you weren't having a conversation. You were not talking about anything. And he just blurts out the first thing in his mind. And you're just going, huh? Okay? Bring somebody in the loop, all right? Make sure you have a little bit of a structure. The next one, remember active listening? Failure to listen. Make sure you are listening. Make sure that you don't just go into a conversation. And again, this is a really big marriage, dating, relationship, conversation point of make sure you listen to the person you're talking to. It's critical. We can't get anything done. Can you name me one time in the Bible when listening was critical and because God entered the chat, it failed? Tower of Babel, that's right. Failure to listen. Not that they chose not to, they literally could not. So that's different, but it's the same thing. All right, the next one is emotional and aggressive demeanor. I would call this bullying. I would not call this any sort of positive or negative. This is just straight up bullying. This is walking into a conversation and going, well, I don't think anything you say is of value, so poo-poo on you, get out of here, right? You are not entering into active listening. You're not even entering into a conversation where you want to hear their opinions. You just want to bully them into thinking that what you're doing is right and your voice is the only one that deserves to be heard. And the next one is poor nonverbal communication. It is harmful body language. Show me harmful body language. You cross your arms, that is a psychologist's #1 definition for closed off communication. You don't have to say a word. You're not listening. You can cross your arms and you are not engaged anymore. Like if you're talking to somebody and that's the posture they take, I wouldn't continue. Because that's not a comfy, I'm leisurely listening to your conversation. Okay? And if somebody puts their hands on their hips, you might want to get like 10 feet back, right? Because that means we're going to go from here to here to here. Okay? Fix it. Protect yourself out there, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So let's make sure that we have good nonverbal communication. That also is things like eye rolling. Do you guys eye roll in your communication? Okay, good. Don't do that. Mama ain't going to like that. It's stuff like smirking. Like every time they say something, oh, I can't stand that. When someone's like, right? It's so annoying. So annoying. My younger brother did that. Just made you want to slap that smirk off his face real quick. But he cried a lot, so we couldn't do that. So you either do it with the smirking or the crying, and I would pick the smirking. And then we have refusing to adapt. We talked about being a good adapter, refusing to adapt, refusing to even enter into the conversation, to listen to somebody share what their feelings are, share what they're thinking, share how they do things. We are not interested. We're not going to want to learn. And I think that's the most unhealthy thing in a conversation. If I enter it and you're expecting me to listen to you, then you have to listen to me, but in a respectful manner. And it's probably the best way we should do it. And then the next one is overloading the argument. That is presenting a large volume of underdeveloped points rather than focusing on a few strong ones, right? So that would be like, how many of you like to build Lego? Okay, so if you like to build Lego, that would be like me giving you step 1 through 200 all at once. But I'm not going to tell you what step 1 is, or 9 is, or 13. I'm just going to give you all the steps. Here you go. Figure it out. It literally puts the burden of deciphering and understanding on your opponent. And that's not helpful, because then you're not going to have a good dialogue. You're just dumping everything on them and expecting them to go through it. The last one is toxic partner dynamics. Toxic partner dynamics. In team-based debates, bad debaters will blame their partners for mistakes. Like, man, you couldn't come up with a thought in a paper bag, man. Like, why are you even on this team? So you blame other people for your inadequacies. Those are the goods and the bads. I know that's a lot of notes, but I wanted to make sure that we understood what we needed to watch for, what we needed to take care of, and everything else. The first thing we need to do is we need to understand what apologetics is. What does apologetics mean? That is a blank. You ready? I'll let you fill it in. Apologetics is the intellectual defense of the faith. The intellectual defense of the faith, and it involves providing a rational, reasoned argument. Not a bunch of ideas, not a bunch of things that sound pretty good to you in your head. It is a rational argument for its truth claims. I should have underlined truths as well. Not what we surmise, not what we think, truth. And it doesn't matter, I'm going to point this out really quick, you're probably going to get mad. It doesn't matter what color Jesus' hair was. It doesn't. It doesn't matter if he had a beard or if he didn't have a beard. You can love Jesus however you want in your head. So don't worry about that. What you need to understand is the intellectual, factual, rational, emotionally stable arguments. Okay? And this is why it is important for us. It is important because in 1 Peter 3:15 through 16, it says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord." That's step one. For us to enter into an apologetic debate about something, we have to revere Christ as Lord. If you walk into a conversation questioning whether or not Jesus Christ is Lord, don't go in. Stay on the other side of that door, because you will lose. And not only will you lose, but I will honestly say that if you go into a conversation and you try to defend your faith, we as Christians look soft, because most of us in today's world don't know how to properly answer questions. That's not me making an idea or an opinionated statement, that's facts. Because we look at the Western church trend today, and we don't know how to defend our faith adequately enough to be able to say, yes, I love Jesus. And then that whole entire statement falls apart when someone goes, why? As soon as you enter into a conversation and someone says, why? You go, because he's really cool. It doesn't work that way. We have to make sure that we are so much on guard and prepared for any kind of question that comes our way. And it is okay to say you don't know. I'm going to preface it right now. It's all right for you to say you don't know the answer. Because that's better than you making something up, sending somebody away, and finding out you lied to them. That's worse. Be honest. Care about the person enough to admit that you are not as smart as you think you are. I'm not digging at you. I'm being truthful. That's the whole reason we do this. Because when he says, in your hearts revere Christ as Lord, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope that you have. Have something in your back pocket. Find a Bible verse. Keep something locked away in your brain of saying, if someone were to ask me on the street, hey, does anybody have a Jesus shirt on? I don't. Today would have been a good day to wear a Jesus shirt. If you did, and someone would say, hey, who's Jesus? You better have an answer. You're wearing that shirt. Get ready, because a question like that may come up. And then it says, but do this with gentleness and what? Respect. So all these things that I read prior to this is backed up first by a biblical basis. Then it says keeping a clear conscience so that those, and when I say clear conscience, I mean if we are good debaters, we can walk away from this knowing that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ will be ashamed of their slander. Don't give people a reason to talk bad about you. Conduct yourselves in a manner that is holy and worthy of representing Jesus, who stood in the place for you. Right? And then the next thing, another Bible verse for you is 2 Timothy 4:2, which says, preach the what? Word. I'm so sorry. That word should be capital W. Preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. That means you could be in your pajama pants, get in the trash can, and someone walks up and goes, will you pray for me? In your pajama pants. Yes, you will. And then it says, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with complete patience and teaching. Now, if we were to go straight into an intellectual conversation about God with you, and you were to ask to defend most of your faith, you would typically start with a Bible verse, or you would start with some sort of theological foundation, and that's great. But I need to warn you, if you do that, then and you enter in a conversation with an atheist, it's not going to go very far. You enter a conversation with anybody who has a different belief than you that does not agree with the terminology that you use, it's not going to go so well. And here's why. Because you are on a different plane from somebody else. All right, so here's the diagram. You have two playing fields, right? Here's you. Look at you. You're so happy you're ready to tell somebody about Jesus on this field, right? But then you have somebody else. I should have made him happy too, but he's standing over there. Okay, so you have him on another playing field. You are both having two very different conversations. You're both defining things differently. You're both explaining things that make sense to you in your head, and there is no bridge between you and somebody else. Make sense? So you have to do your best due diligence to explain to that person and establish some sort of ground foundation to have a conversation. Because you can't come right in and go, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then they're over there going, in the beginning, there was a supernova. And all the elements came crashing together. And it went kaboom. And we have earth. Right? It doesn't work that way. Now, I was taught that in college. I had a class where an entire section of that was talked about a swirling of chemicals and elements. And they all started spinning faster and faster and faster. And boom, then the earth started. You will face that. I don't know what kind of schools you'll go to or what kind of universities you'll attend or even if you're having those conversations in school now. But you have to have an understanding that there's two playing fields. It's you and your quote-unquote opponent. I use opponent quotations-wise because they're not your opponent. There's somebody that God loves and there's somebody that Jesus died for. And so that's how we need to look at them. And that's probably the first thing when we enter into a debate. We look at them and say, God loves them. So I love them. And I need to figure out the best way I can communicate and care about them, respect them. So we need to figure out how to establish this playing field where we both can have that conversation. So there are a few arguments that will help you establish it. And I love when you watch a really good debater establish certain things. They'll talk about, hey, can we define this really quick? So we both understand what this means. Hey, can we define this really quick so that we both understand what this means? So that when you have this conversation, they can't deviate from what you've already agreed upon as your status of the definition. You tracking with me? So if I were to define Jesus as God who is loving and caring and loves me so much and died for me and all these things, then the person can't come in and go, well, Jesus is God, and according to the Old Testament, he just wants to destroy everybody, and he's a malicious God. Right? That's two very different definitions. Because there's a lot of people who look at God of the Old Testament as this God who liked to smite people for fun. That's a weird definition, but that's not what we need to establish the ground basis on. Tracking with me? So we need to come to a middle ground. And there's a couple of arguments that I want to show you that are timeless, and yes, there are holes, but I want you to write these down, and I want you to think about these, because as you process through them, and as you work on them, I want you to find the holes in them so that you can figure out how you can have an honest conversation with somebody. So the first argument that we see is the cosmological argument. The cosmological argument is something that we got from a guy named Thomas Aquinas, who borrowed most of his concepts from a guy named Aristotle. Anybody know who these two guys are? I hope you don't know them because you'd be really, really old. Sorry, that was a dad joke. I'm allowed to make one. Yes, we know who Aquinas is. We know who Aristotle is. But Aquinas came up with this argument. And this argument is established to level the playing field for us. It's not arguing for the existence of God. It is arguing for the basis that there has to be a divine creator of everything. So I'm going to show this to you really quick. So the first one is this. When you are reading it, some things in the world are caused by something. This is how you would start an argument or a conversation if it is heated, if you require some sort of debate. I'm sorry if I'm in the way. Maybe I can turn around. No, I don't think it'll make any better. Some things in the world are caused by something. That means if there's a car on a Hot Wheel track, it has to be pushed to move, right? If not pushed, there has to be a gust of wind. If not wind, then a squirrel drops an acorn and it knocks it to move forward. There has to be something to cause upon something to happen, a response or something like that. The next one, nothing can cause itself to exist. Nothing can cause itself to exist. So some things in the world are caused by something else. Nothing can cause itself to exist. This is an if-then, if-then. Tracking? Okay. The next one. So anything that is caused must be caused by something outside of itself. Is your head hurting? Okay, it's okay. That's why I'm getting you to write it down. I want you to think about this. Although this is a very complicated way of stating it, it helps you understand when you are framing a conversation how you need to define terms to move forward. When you are talking about things, how do you relate to it? How do you relate to somebody? How do you get somebody to stand on your level, on your playing field, in order to have a reasonable conversation? So we're at some things in the world are caused by something else. Nothing can cause itself to exist. So anything that is caused must be caused by something outside of itself. Okay? We're not talking about God. We are establishing a ground basis for the conversation. Anything that is caused must be caused by something outside of itself. Right? And then the next one, I love this. This one just really gets to me. If you keep going back in time, the chain of causes cannot go on forever. Right? It must have a beginning. So, if there is a beginning to the chain of causes, there must then be a very first cause. There has to be something acting on it. There has to be something creating it. There has to be something that is making it start. All right, the last one. The last one. This first cause. Oh, did I already do it? Oh, no, I left it off. So this first cause, if you have that extra blank, this first cause is often called God. The first cause is often called God. We're not arguing for the case of God's existence. We're arguing for the fact that if we follow this trend, like notice how easy it was for us to slip God in there at the very end. If we're talking with somebody and we're like, hey man, something has to act on something to make something happen. Keep it vague. Keep it super vague. Don't even let them know where you're going with it. But did you see how quickly we got to, well, something has to act on it, and then something can't exist without something acting on it. And if we have to go back far enough in time to get us to this point, then God has to be somewhere in this play. It's the teleological argument. And teleological means, like the telos, means that it has a purpose or a goal. We're almost done, guys, I promise. I didn't mean for this to be this long. So the purpose of the teleological argument is to prove that complex design requires a creator to make it. Thus, God is necessary. So take the step of God created the earth. There has to be a divine influence on this planet. And now let's turn it and put it into their purpose. So here's how the teleological argument works. First one, things that are very complex usually need a designer. A watch is the argument. A watch is the thing that most people, they call it the watchmaker theory, right? It is so complex and so intricate. I wish that I could have had the opportunity to learn how to make watches, because they're so intricate. And if one thing goes off, the watch doesn't work anymore. It's fascinating. But in this purpose, we know that in the statement of the argument, things that are very complex usually need a designer. I would say the most complex thing in the world is a human being. Because one thing goes wrong and the whole entire human body just kind of has a spasm, and then we're like, oh no, what do we do now? But if we look at a watch, can you put all the pieces of a watch on the table and go, any day now it'll put itself together. So we're all going to sit here and we're all going to watch this watch put itself together. Okay? That's the argument. That is the statement, that things that are very complex usually need a designer. Do we agree? Okay, good. The next one, the universe is incredibly complex. Did you know NASA is still discovering constellations and galaxies still? I just saw it last week, there was a satellite that they sent out back in the 70s that just came back to life and just sent back images. But we're talking the 70s, so all it did was send ones and zeros. But they were able to translate that to super, super insane imagery. I wish I'd saved that for this. But this thing is still flying way out there in the universe, and it's still capturing things that we have no idea about. So if we look at the definition, the universe is incredibly complex. Are we still tracking? We would agree? Yes? You see where we're going? The third one, therefore, the universe must have a designer. It's basic, but it makes sense. One more. The last one is the ontological argument. Ontological, which basically says that if we can imagine something truly perfect, then that perfect thing must exist. And here's why. It says this, that if we can imagine the greatest possible being, This is not going to be a run-on sentence. But if we can imagine the greatest possible being, and if existing in reality is better than just existing in our minds, then this greatest possible being must exist in reality. If it didn't, it wouldn't be the greatest. This is the ontological argument. This one requires a lot more thought because it's not this. It's literally a run-on sentence getting to the point. But it's 3 points in one. So if we can imagine the greatest possible being, which I think in most days, most creative things that we see now, it's like an anime. It's like the wildest thing you can think of. And I'm like, man, I don't know. It's a special brain to come up with stuff like that. If you like anime, I'm sorry. But I would never be able to come up with that. But if we can imagine the greatest possible being, and that if existing in reality is better than just existing in our minds, then this greatest possible being must exist in reality. And if it didn't, it wouldn't be the greatest. But does God fit in our finite minds? No. So what we need to recognize is that God is greater than anything we could come up with. You tracking? So what we need to understand is whatever somebody in their finite mind can come up with, can land on, and surmise for themselves, they have no idea how great God is. But you can start with this argument of saying that if we were to have some sort of conversation, if we were to have some sort of playing field that we're all agreeing upon, that if we can cognitively agree that there is something great and wonderful and is in our finite minds that we can comprehend, then it has to exist in this world. But when it comes to actually witnessing to people and when it comes to actually engaging in a conversation, this is all theory. This is all formulaic. It's good to know. It helps you understand how to treat people and how to converse with people and how to build conversations with those who might be difficult to talk to. But the important thing that we need to remember is that we are talking to people about Jesus. That we are sharing Jesus with people. And the really important thing for us to remember is it's not us who's changing people's lives. We're the vessel. We're the tool that God uses to bring the gospel to people who need him the most. And so the perfect example that I have of this is in Acts chapter 16. And I loved this when I found this. I was like, this is the perfect example to set us up for next week. But I wanted to show it to you. It's going to be in Acts chapter 16. When you go to a group of people and you expect them to embrace you, you're already losing a battle. It's super important. Even before, like, remember those nonverbals? Don't go in crossing your arms. Don't go in rolling your eyes. If you're eating something you don't like, don't make a face. Just put it in a napkin and put it over there. Swirl around on your plate. Make it look like you've eaten something. Maybe the dog hasn't eaten. Pour it on the floor. Something like that. And then let's go on to verse 13. It says, on the Sabbath, we went outside to the city gate, to the river, where we expected to find a place of prayer. What's their objective? They're going to pray. That's the objective. That's what they went out to do. They were going about their own business. There was no ulterior motive. And we sat down and began to speak to the woman who had gathered there. Multiple women are present. And one of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira? Oh, it's not. My bad. How about now? Okay. Thyatira, named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth, which means she's a businesswoman. And she was a worshiper of God. Now, she's a worshiper of God, and they have this opportunity to speak to her. What do you think she is practicing? She's Jewish. So we haven't heard about Jesus yet. But she is of that same thread. But what typically was the response of a Jewish person when they heard somebody talk about Jesus? You either got stoned, you got rejected, you cast out, all those things. So she's a worshiper of God, but we're attempting to tell this woman about Jesus. Actually, multiple women about Jesus. And look at this. This is the important part I want you to hear. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. I think that's the first thing before we even talk to somebody is you pray, Lord, let this conversation be received by this person. Would you open their heart before I even get to them? Holy Spirit, would you start enacting something in their heart to where they are receptive of the good news that you have? Like even now, Lord, let them recognize that there is a strong love that they've never experienced in their life. Before you even get there, you pray for whoever And I've seen it. I know some missionaries who, when they say, I start a conversation and I'm not ready for it, in my head, I'm already praying, Lord, let this conversation be exactly what you need it to be so that this person can receive Jesus. It's not us. And Paul shows the perfect example because it says, the Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. And in verse 15, when she and the members of her household were baptized, that means she accepted Christ. They were baptized immediately. She invited them to her home. And she says, if you consider me a believer in the Lord, she said, come and stay at my house. And she persuaded us. Next week, we are going to find out what he talked about. And next week, you are going to practice how we talk to people. But I want you guys to take this home, think about this, look this stuff up. Don't just take my word for it. Ask the questions. It's important that we ask the questions because we have to be inquisitive. We have to think about these things. We've got to learn the facts, know it, so that we can be the best possible witness. That's why we're here, right? And if you have questions, I'm going to put this out there. If you yourself have questions, you're like, I'm not really sure, come back next week. Because I guarantee you will not walk out of here next week with any questions on the basics of whether or not you know Jesus. I promise.